Easter, a time for faith, family, and fresh beginnings. But sometimes, behind the pastel colors and smiling faces, there are stories we never speak of. Stories that hide in church basements, whisper through the trees, and knock at your window before dawn. Tonight, you're not just hearing ghost stories. You're stepping into the kind of truth that stays with you. These are 3 disturbing true horror stories. That happened on Easter. I must have been around 6 or 7 when it happened, young enough to still believe in things like magic and the Easter Bunny, but old enough to sit through an Easter Sunday church service without fidgeting too much. For my family, Easter wasn't just a holiday, it was sacred. We were the kind of household where Sunday morning meant polished shoes, tucked-in shirts, and gospel music, playing as early as 6 a.m. Church was more than tradition. It was our second home. That year, our church had gone all out. Pastel banners lined the pews, lilies framed the altar, and every seat in the sanctuary was full. I remember sitting next to my mom, legs dangling off the bench, tracing shapes on the wooden hymnal holder in front of me, while the choir sang about resurrection and light. After the service ended, we headed downstairs like always. The basement level held a long, carpeted hallway, with classrooms branching off both sides, each one decorated for Easter, with cutouts of bunnies, lambs, and crosses. It smelled like construction paper and crayon wax, and I liked that smell. My parents kissed me on the forehead and waved goodbye as I joined my Sunday school group, just like we'd done a dozen times before. I felt completely safe. After all, this was church. What could possibly go wrong? Class had just started. We were coloring pictures of the empty tomb, Jesus rising in soft crayon pastels, sunshine and angels drawn with shaky little hands. I remember my teacher wearing a pair of plastic bunny ears, the kind you'd find at the dollar store. Everyone was in a good mood, humming along to a gospel CD playing softly in the background. But the Easter service had been longer than usual, and I needed to go to the bathroom. I raised my hand, and the teacher nodded without much thought. The hallway outside was dimmer than I expected. The pastel decorations that had looked so cheerful earlier now seemed quieter, still. The bathrooms were just a short walk down, past a few closed classroom doors. I pushed open the boys' room, the heavy door groaning as it swung shut behind me. Inside, the lights buzzed faintly overhead. I picked the first stall and closed the latch with a soft click. It was quiet. Too quiet. I could just barely hear the echo of a teacher's voice down the hallway, distant and muffled. That's when I heard it, a low, metallic scrape. Not the rustle of clothes or the slam of a door. This was slower, deliberate, like metal dragging across metal, soft but sharp. It was coming from the next stall. I froze. My legs kicked slightly above the floor, not quite touching. I listened again. Scrape, pause, scrape. I wasn't scared, not yet. I thought maybe another kid was playing a prank, scratching something inside the stall. But no one laughed, no one said a word. It was just that sound, steady, strange, and far too calm. I stayed in the stall, quiet as I could be, my heart thudding in my chest. The scraping stopped. Silence. I hurried to finish and stepped out, still trying to convince myself it was nothing, just nerves, maybe a loose coat hook or an old hinge catching. But as I turned toward the sinks, I caught something in the mirror. Movement. The stall door next to mine creaked open, slowly, and then he stepped out. Not a kid, not a teacher, a man, grown, wearing a full Easter bunny costume. At first, I didn't even panic. My 6-year-old brain just saw the Easter bunny. That was all I needed to believe. The ears flopped forward as he stepped into view, and I even smiled, and turned around. "Hi," I said. He didn't answer, just stared. The bunny head was tilted slightly to one side, unmoving. The fur looked dirty, gray in patches. One of the plastic eyes had been sewn back on, crooked. The suit hung loose, like it didn't fit quite right. He took a step forward. I took one back. Then he raised his hand, slowly, pointed toward the door. His voice came next, muffled but clear enough. "You're the lucky chosen child," he said. "I have a gift for you." Outside. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I didn't run. I didn't scream. I believed him. It was church after all. What kind of bad person would be inside a church? So, without a second thought, I walked toward the emergency door at the end of the hallway, the one we were told never to use. I reached for the handle, and behind me, the Easter Bunny followed, silent, step by step. The heavy gray door opened with a groan. I didn't even glance back. I just stepped outside into the blinding midday sun, still thinking, hoping. This was all part of some church surprise. The Easter Bunny followed, his big costume feet thudding softly behind me on the pavement. He didn't speak again, just walked. I looked up at him once. He was holding something in his hand now, not a basket, not candy, just something small. I couldn't tell what it was. He took my hand. I didn't pull away. We crossed the church parking lot together, toward the far corner, where an old sedan was parked behind a dumpster, mostly hidden from view. I remember thinking it was strange he parked so far from everyone else. I remember wondering why he didn't bring the gift out here instead of taking me to it. Then, I saw it. Another Easter Bunny, stepping out from behind the car. I stopped walking. I froze in place, eyes bouncing between the two of them, heart thudding now, with something I hadn't felt before. Not excitement, not curiosity, fear. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. My legs wouldn't move. Then, salvation. A scream, loud and sharp, tore through the air behind me. A woman's voice. Miss Sabrina. The man in the suit instantly let go of my hand and took off running, toward the car, toward the second costumed figure. I ran too, away from them, back toward the church, back toward the voice that had screamed for me. Miss Sabrina met me halfway, arms wide, pulling me in, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. I looked back just in time to see the car speed out of the lot, fast, desperate. I couldn't see who was driving, but I could swear, just for a second, I saw someone in the back seat. Another kid. The rest of that day was a blur. I remember sitting on a folding chair in a side room of the church, wrapped in a blanket someone had found, while adults whispered in tight circles just outside the door. My parents were called immediately. My mom cried so hard she could barely speak. My dad held her, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like he might break a tooth. The police came. They asked gentle questions. I answered as best as I could. I told them about the second Easter Bunny, about the car, about what I thought I saw in the back seat. They took it seriously, but in the end, there were no missing child reports, no license plate, no leads. Nothing ever came of it, but something had happened, something real. The man in the costume knew where to stand, where to wait, and which door could be opened from the inside. He had known what he was doing, and somehow, I'd been the one he found. I'm older now, I've graduated, I've moved away. But every year, when Easter rolls around, it all comes back. The hallway, the costume, the voice behind the mask. Sometimes I lie awake wondering, what if Miss Sabrina hadn't come outside just then? What if she had been a minute later, or not at all? What if I had stepped into that car? And what still chills me, what still ties my stomach in knots, is the feeling deep in my gut that there really was a child in that back seat. We think of churches as safe. We teach our kids to trust adults in costume. We dress up innocence in bunny ears and pastel colors and forget that predators don't always wear dark hoods. Sometimes they wear a smile. Sometimes they stand in the very places we feel most safe. If this story makes you stop and think, even just for a second, then please stay aware, stay alert, and teach your children that even the Easter Bunny isn't always what he seems. What saved that little boy in the church wasn't luck, it was timing. A teacher stepped outside at just the right moment. But what happens when no one's around to help? Our next story takes us into the woods, where a simple Easter game between friends turned into a fight for survival. This is the story of the Easter manhunt. It was the Thursday before Easter, and school had just let out for the long weekend. No homework, no alarms, just spring air and the kind of freedom you don't realize you'll miss when you're older. I was 17, right in that sweet spot between boy and man, old enough to crave independence, but still young enough to chase fun wherever it might lead. That night, my friends and I were crashing at Raz's place. His parents were out of town, and his house sat alone on the edge of a thick patch of woods. No neighbors, no curfews, just us, junk food, and the whole night ahead. There were 6 of us: me, Jake, Chuck, Arthur, Race, and Raz. We'd grown up together, shared everything from late-night video game sessions to our first heartbreaks. That night, Chuck had an idea, one that sounded stupid and brilliant in equal measure. "Let's play manhunt," he said, grinning. We didn't even hesitate. Raz's mom had a whole stash of plastic Easter eggs in the garage, left over from some church event. So we made it our own twisted version, a manhunt Easter egg hybrid. 2 teams, one hiding, one hunting. Eggs hidden across the woods. Seekers had to protect their eggs while finding the others. The hiders had to stay undetected and steal them all to win. We set up the teams, grabbed flashlights, and spread out. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky bruised purple and gold. The woods behind Raz's backyard stretched far, thicker than you'd expect, and darker than any of us remembered. But we weren't scared. We were invincible. Just a bunch of guys chasing childhood traditions in the shadow of adulthood, laughing too loud, moving too fast, and thinking that danger only lived in movies. How wrong we were. Once the teams were picked and the rules laid out, we grabbed flashlights from Raz's garage and scattered into the woods. I was on a team with Chuck and Rose. We were the Seekers. Jake and Arthur were hiding somewhere out there with a few stolen plastic eggs. We gave them a 10-minute head start, enough time to slip into the shadows and bury their prizes beneath tree roots or tuck them behind old logs. It wasn't quite dark yet, but the trees swallowed the light faster than I expected. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. No more laughter, no footsteps, just the soft crunch of pine needles under my sneakers and the sound of my own breath. I flicked my flashlight on, just enough to scan the ground every few steps. Didn't want to trip on anything, but I kept the beam low. In a game like this, light gave you away. A few minutes in, I thought I saw something move, 20, maybe 30 feet ahead. Just a flicker between the trees, a shift in the shadows. I stopped, strained my eyes. There, again. A figure crouched low behind a thick trunk, half hidden. For a second, I grinned. Had to be Race. He always picked bold hiding spots, figuring no one would expect someone to hide so close to the hunters. I crouched low, trying to circle around without giving myself away. But the figure didn't move, not even a flinch. It stayed perfectly still. almost too still. Something in my gut pulled tight, like a knot I didn't remember tying. Maybe it was the way the figure's shape looked, too tall, too angular. Or maybe it was just the silence. Even in a game, there's always a little noise, a shuffle, a giggle. But this? It was like the woods were holding their breath. And so was I. I crept closer, keeping low, half holding my breath. Whoever it was still hadn't moved. I was maybe 10 feet away now, close enough to see the outline of their shoulders, the curve of their back pressed to the trunk. Still squatting, still frozen. That's when something clicked in me. The shape, it wasn't right. The body looked too long. The arms hung lower than they should have, but I'd already committed. I lunged forward, tapped the shoulder hard, and shouted, "Gotcha!" The figure turned, and my whole world stopped. It wasn't Race. It wasn't Jake. It wasn't anyone I knew. The man's hair was slicked back, soaked in sweat. His eyes were wide, unblinking, wild, like something behind them had broken. His clothes were torn, filthy. He smelled like rot and gasoline. I stumbled back, too stunned to run. He tackled me. We hit the ground hard. The wind knocked clean out of me. Before I could even yell, his hands were around my throat, pressing down with terrifying force. I kicked, grabbed at his wrists. Nothing moved. His face was inches from mine. His teeth were clenched, eyes locked on mine. I couldn't breathe. No air, no sound. Just leaves digging into my back and the sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. This was real, not the game, not a prank. I was going to die in the middle of the woods during an Easter egg hunt. Then, light. A flashlight beam jerked through the trees. The man's head snapped up. He let go, just like that. Bolted into the woods like an animal, vanishing between the trunks in seconds. I lay there, gasping, coughing, frozen. Until I heard footsteps, Chuck's voice cutting through the dark. He'd seen it. He'd seen all of it. Chuck pulled me to my feet. I was still gasping, the bark of the forest floor imprinted across my back, my neck throbbing with each heartbeat. His flashlight flickered as he scanned the trees, but whoever had attacked me was long gone. "Did you see him?" I rasped. Chuck nodded, pale as the moonlight. "I thought it was part of the game," he said, "until I saw him on top of you. We didn't chase him. We knew better. We ran back toward the house, stumbling over roots and brush, calling out for the others. One by one, they returned. Raz, Arthur, Jake, all out of breath, confused, shouting over each other, until Arthur said something that shut us all up. "I saw 2 people earlier," he said, "before the game even started." We stared at him. "What?" Arthur's eyes darted around nervously. "When I was hiding, I saw 2 figures walking through the trees, slowly, like they were watching. I thought it was you guys breaking the rules. But we hadn't been together. We hadn't crossed that side of the woods yet, which meant there were at least 3 of them. 1 who attacked me, 2 more who were already out there. We sat in silence, the woods suddenly feeling a whole lot bigger and a whole lot darker. "I'm calling the cops," I said, my voice still rough. But Raz stepped forward, shaking his head. "Number, we can't." "What are you talking about?" "I'm grounded," he admitted. "My parents don't even know we're out here. If the cops show up, I'm screwed." "You're kidding me." I was staring at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. He wasn't joking. Chuck looked torn. Jake looked away. No one wanted to be the one to ruin Raz's trust. So I caved. We didn't call anyone. We pretended it was over. But the forest, it was still out there. And so were they. I didn't sleep much that night. After everyone calmed down, or pretended to, we went back to the basement. Rose queued up a movie none of us paid attention to. I crawled into a sleeping bag early, facing the wall, trying not to replay the attack in my head. But I couldn't stop seeing his eyes. Not angry, not even hateful, just empty, like no one was home behind them. I left before sunrise the next morning, didn't say goodbye, just texted the group a quick, "Thanks for the night," as I walked home alone in the cold morning fog settling like breath on my skin. And I kept quiet for a while. No police report, no follow-up. Just a story that felt more like a dream the more I tried to explain it. A week later, Raz told us he'd gone back into the woods to collect the Easter eggs we never finished hiding. He laughed when he said it, nervous, lighthearted, but his hands were shaking. Sometimes I wonder how close he got, how close any of us were to never making it out. I haven't been back to Raz's house since. I don't do night walks in the woods anymore. And I definitely don't play manhunt. It's easy to tell yourself you're invincible when you're young, that the worst things happen to other people in other places. But sometimes, evil isn't halfway across the world. Sometimes it's waiting behind a tree, 15 feet from your best friend's backyard, on a quiet holiday night, wearing a human face. So, if you've got kids, if you're hosting sleepovers, if you think you know the limits of what's out there, double check your doors, know where your flashlights are, and never ever assume the game is the only thing being hunted. He thought the scariest thing that night was hiding from his friends, but he learned that sometimes you're not the only one playing the game, and sometimes the game never ends. But the next story, well, it's not about games at all. It's about tradition, about family, and about what waits just beyond the tree line, when the rest of the world is sleeping. This is the story of Easter in the woods. Easter at Uncle John's place had always been tradition. Every year, my extended family would make the long drive out to his house, an old 2-story farmhouse that sat on acres of quiet land, flanked by thick woods on every side. It was the kind of place people called peaceful, secluded. The kind of place where the stars looked sharper and the nights felt heavier. But I never liked it. Not really. I was the city kid, the quiet one. The one who didn't fish, didn't hunt, didn't care about tractor brands or deer season. Most of my cousins were older, married, raising kids, running family farms. I was still figuring myself out, drifting through college and dodging awkward small talk about career plans and girlfriends I didn't have. The only one I really connected with was Kevin, my cousin, 2 years older, laid back, and easy to talk to. He didn't push, didn't pry, just existed in his own calm bubble and let me float there when I needed a break from the noise upstairs. That first morning, we hung out in the basement, shooting pool, trading dumb stories. The house creaked above us with the sounds of a holiday gathering, laughter, distant yelling, the clatter of dishes. It felt far away. Then Kevin said something I didn't expect. "You ever actually walked through the woods out back?" I looked up. "No," I said honestly. "Not really a nature guy." He grinned. "You should. There's stuff out there you wouldn't believe." I didn't know what he meant by stuff, and honestly I didn't care, but I was bored, restless. So, when he grabbed his hoodie and said, "Come on, I'll show you," I followed. I didn't think twice. The sun was still high when we stepped off the back deck and into the tree line. Kevin walked ahead with the casual confidence of someone who'd done it 100 times. He didn't even pause as the backyard grass gave way to packed dirt and dry leaves. The woods weren't wild, but they weren't tamed either. No trails, no markers. just the sense that something had carved quiet paths here long before we ever arrived. "We'll stick to the ridgeline," Kevin said. "There's cool stuff up ahead. Old trees, weird carvings, you'll see." I nodded, not really listening, just watching the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves in shifting golden beams. The quiet out there was different, not peaceful, just thick, like the trees were listening. We walked for 20 minutes, maybe more. It was hard to keep track. I kept glancing back, trying to remember which way we came. Every tree started to look the same. Then came the sound, a low, rhythmic thunk. We both stopped. It didn't sound natural, didn't sound like an animal. It was slow, heavy, like someone swinging a hammer into wood. Thunk. A pause. Thunk. Kevin glanced at me. Probably someone hunting or working on something. But he didn't sound sure. The sound came again, not closer, not farther, just there, holding its place. "We should check it out," he said. "Seriously?" I asked, but I was already moving. Curiosity has a way of winning, even when your gut whispers no. We walked toward it, carefully. Kevin in front, me close behind. Every step felt louder than it should. Then Kevin stopped cold. His arm shot out across my chest, stopping me mid-step. He was staring at something in the trees. I followed his gaze and felt the blood drain from my face. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. 3 trees stood close together, thick trunks stretching high into the canopy, and nailed to each of them, way up, at least 15 feet, were upside-down crosses. Not small ones, not the kind you hang on a necklace. These were made of thick wood, crude and splintered, hammered deep into the bark. Each one tilted slightly as if they'd been forced in by hand. Kevin whispered, "What the hell?" His voice barely carried. We just stood there, frozen. And then I saw movement. To our right, maybe 20 yards away. A man stepped out from the brush. He looked like he'd been waiting, tall, broad shoulders, dressed like a lumberjack, flannel shirt, heavy boots, beard thick and unkempt. He didn't say a word, just stared. But not at Kevin, at me. His eyes were locked, heavy and unreadable. There was no anger in them, no madness, just purpose. Kevin instinctively moved in front of me. "Hey, we're just passing through," he called out, raising a hand. Didn't mean to trespass or anything. Still, the man didn't speak. Then, finally, his mouth moved. "You shouldn't be here." 5 words, flat, calm. But they landed in my chest like ice. Kevin backed up slowly, gripping my sleeve. "We're leaving," he said, louder this time. The man didn't move. He just stood there, watching, like a warning carved into the woods. We turned and walked, fast but not running. Every instinct screamed not to look back. And still, I did. He hadn't followed, but he was still standing there, still staring. We made it back without getting lost. Didn't talk much, didn't need to. Kevin told Uncle John everything, about the crosses, the man, his voice. I half expected Uncle John to laugh, or shrug it off as some eccentric neighbor. He didn't. He got real quiet, said he didn't know anyone out here who looked like that, then asked us the same question over and over. "Are you sure he didn't follow you?" We were sure, weren't we? The rest of the day passed in an uneasy fog. Everyone else in the house was too busy prepping for Easter to notice how off we were. We kept to the basement, trying to distract ourselves with pool and music and jokes that didn't land. That night, I went to bed early. Couldn't sleep though. At around 5 a.m., I gave up. The sky outside the window was still more shadow than light. The house was silent. I climbed to the 3rd floor to Uncle John's study. He had this massive bay window that overlooked the entire backyard, the woods, the slope, the fire pit at the edge of the grass. That's when I saw it, a glow at the tree line, not a flashlight, not a phone, fire, 4 figures standing just beyond the first row of trees. Each held a small torch, the flames flickering low and controlled. They weren't walking, they weren't moving. They were facing the house, facing me. I couldn't scream, couldn't even move. When I finally did, I ran straight to Uncle John's room, woke him up with a single breathless sentence. There are people in the woods. He didn't ask for proof, he just grabbed his rifle. By the time we made it to the back deck, the figures were gone, vanished into the trees without a sound. But Uncle John didn't hesitate. He raised the barrel skyward and fired 3 shots. The whole house woke in chaos, shouting, crying kids, slamming doors. The holiday was ruined, but no one cared. We stayed inside for the rest of the day, blinds drawn tight, even in daylight. No one went out back. No one mentioned the crosses. It was Easter, and we were afraid. That was 9 months ago. Uncle John says he hasn't seen anything since. No strange fires, no figures, no sound from the woods at night. The upside-down crosses are gone too, cut down the day after Easter. But every time he calls me, I hear it in his voice. He's still looking out the window. I never told my parents everything, just that something happened, that I wasn't comfortable going back next year. They didn't push. Kevin doesn't talk about it much either. We text sometimes, trade links, pretend like we're both busy with school. But underneath the silence, I know he remembers it like I do, because we weren't meant to see what we saw. Not those crosses, not that man, and not the firelit stairs before dawn. What haunts me isn't just the memory. It's the fact that no one else seemed to care. The world didn't stop. The police weren't called. There was no explanation. It just happened, like a warning whispered only to us. And I still don't know what they were trying to say. Maybe it was nothing, a twisted prank, a group of backwoods zealots doing God knows what in secret. But maybe it was something older, something that's been out there long before any of us, watching, waiting, choosing when to be seen. So, if you ever find yourself walking through a forest you don't know well, and you see something that feels off, a symbol, a shape, a sound that doesn't belong, turn around, go back, and don't ask questions. Some truths aren't meant to be found. 3 stories, 3 warnings, a church, a forest, a farmhouse, places we trust until something breaks the silence. Easter might be about rebirth, but for the people in these stories, it became a date they'll never celebrate the same again. If these tales stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe, because next time, we're going somewhere even darker.